Okay, I'm going to start. People will join at their own pace, but today we're going to talk about remote operations and specifically the challenges that we're seeing as cybersecurity concerns go up, complexity of systems at customer sites go up, skill sets required to do stuff become more rarefied as they become deeper on individual items, and how that intersection of all things works to make things faster, better, cheaper, as is the drum of today. So first, my takeaway from today, I want two things. I want you to say, wow, that was easy. That's my goal for you to say. Any user could do anything, any contractor, any first-party employee, any integrator, with multi-factor authentication on any resource from any device without any software installed. All we had to do to configure them was to type in an email address and click, boom, it's there for single sign-on. And the second goal is for them to say, that was really easy. They don't have to install any software. They can just open their device. They can just click, sign in, single sign-on here. I'm showing it with Google. They can do it with their Microsoft account. And all of a sudden, they're presented with a list of all the resources that are there. In this case, we use multi-factor. And here, they're able to log into Ignition or anything they want all of a sudden. So that's my goal. It's just easy for everybody to get their job done. There's no hassle in the middle of stuff that is complicated. So today we're going to discuss managed remote operations, the drivers behind it, the skill set gap that exists that's causing people to want to do stuff remote rather than having a person with each skill on each site, the SaaSification of systems. We're going to discuss that concept where something that was formerly much closer to the thermostat that I had as a kid is now, it's got a license manager on the internet, and there's big data, and it's not just a historian on site, and it's got a subscription, and it's complicated. We're going to talk about big data and all of the AI and predictive analytics and how those are interacting with what were formerly largely air-gapped systems at customer sites. We're going to talk about the perspectives of the operator. They own the equipment, they own the risk. We're going to talk about the perspectives of their partners. I support multiple operators like that. They each have different things. How do I get my job done? And we're going to talk about a non-zero sum new service where all parties win. We talk about when we're negotiating, there's things like poker. For me to win, you have to lose. But then you can think about like constructing a house where the plumber gets paid, and the electrician gets paid, and so on, and everybody wins. You get a house, and everybody gets paid, and it's non-zero sum. So I think there's a non-zero sum solution with cybersecurity and zero trust where everybody gets what they want. It's faster, it's simpler, it's cheaper, and it's more secure. Oops, wrong window. So managed remote operations. The drivers behind this has been around for a little while, but systems are getting more complicated. When you think about something like a PLC or something like that, the amount of logic that's in them is going up. The number of sensors is going up, but often the sensitivity of their accuracy is going up and their uptime. It used to be that it was a nice to have thing where somebody could say, is SCADA up? Okay, I'll sit back a little bit. Oh, it's down. Don't worry, we got this. I'll just go run the knobs and so on. But now you've got process that is more fine-tuned. Have a VFD that you can't start and stop in time, and these systems are getting more interconnected. It used to be that it was really just that panel had its own stuff in it, and then maybe it would feed off to the historian, but now there's a license server involved, and there's a real-time dashboard that the executives are seeing, and there's an off-net database, and this efficiency driver, this is there. Everybody wants predictive analytics. They want to be able to repair the machine 1 minute before it needed to be repaired. They don't want to replace a bearing, a year early just because it might fail, but they don't want it going out of service suddenly, unexpectedly. That's SaaSification. I think about the John Deere business model. When I was a kid, the amount of technology in a John Deere tractor wasn't very high. And you could start it with a screwdriver, and that was really the only tool you needed to service it. And you didn't have this idea that you couldn't repair it. You absolutely could repair it. You didn't have this idea that if it wasn't connected to the internet that you weren't allowed to use it. Today, to buy a John Deere tractor, you have to agree that it's always on connected and you're not allowed to repair it. But also other things have happened this way. CD became music as a service, and we're seeing more and more of industrial stuff happen this way. The HMI, maybe some of the programming runs in the cloud for it, maybe the PLC there's an RTU that is remote. As a consequence, more and more people have a legitimate need for remote network connectivity. Big data, the idea has been around for a long time. The implementation for it will be here any day now, but it's moved from a monthly compliance driver, how much chlorine did we put in the water last month, and et cetera, to it's a millisecond value driver. And today there's a real-time operation occurring that's controlling floodgates or what have you, and it's more millisecond value. It's got to be there in order for the system to work. It means that the network has to be up, the devices have to be up, they have to be able to communicate out, and we have to not have a cybersecurity issue. Big data requires outbound network. There's very few people talking about putting in material-sized databases and columnar store and so on inside their own facility. It's not impossible, but people aren't really doing that. So there's a set of roles in this environment. There's what I call the I operate role. I own the infrastructure. The risk is ultimately mine. That's my pump. That's my PLC. It's my building. If something goes wrong, it's my butt on the line. It's my shareholders who are upset. There's the demographic called I manage. Look, there's somebody that owns that plant, but I know how to run it. On a daily basis, I'm logging in, I'm checking this. When there's an alarm, it's my guy that gets out of bed. We use Twilio, we use SMS, we use this. I run it under contract for them. It could be entirely under contract, or it could be just some aspect of it, but you remotely manage the system. And then there's a set of supporting roles from my standpoint. I design it, I build it, I support it, and I manufacture it. And I draw a distinction between I manage and I support. I support means my customer called me and it's broken and I fix it. I manage means I fix it before my customer tells me, or I'm the one that puts more chemicals in the hopper. I'm the one that changes the knob on the HMI when it needs to. So the difference is one is a 24/7 operations role and one is a break-fix supporting role. And my proposal in today's presentation is that there exists a means for the iManage demographic to increase the amount of business they do with their customer by taking on some of the complexities of what I'm here talking to you today about. So in the challenge perspectives, you can think about challenges are not symmetric across the roles. I own the risk. Cybersecurity is very important to me. Clorox 2023 was in the news. Production was down for months. That was like hundreds of millions of dollars because it's a big scale. They took the brunt of that. There's no way their insurance paid that all out. And they had angry shareholders, they had employees they had laid off, like they owned all of that. I manage, it's a little bit different. They view it more as, look, I want my customers to all be the same. I can't have a different VPN for every customer. I can't remember multi-factor for each one. My team wants full connectivity. I'm willing to compromise on security. So I operate as about, look, it's my way and it's secure and I care because it's my downside. I manage is about, look, can you just make some compromises so we can simplify stuff? And as a consequence, it creates a battleground around identity, who's the user, connectivity, how do I get in there, and policy, when are you allowed to do what? It becomes a battleground rather than a common ground because you're fighting over it. And it creates these acrimonious discussions about, you're not putting a back door in, are you? Why are you not more pragmatic? We could just get this done while we're in the meeting room here today. That becomes an acrimonious discussion. I'm here to say, non-zero sum, we can get all those parties lined up, going the same direction and agreeing that this makes their life better. So that identity battleground, look, people work for companies. I know you might be self-employed, but generally people work for companies. And companies attest your identity via something called authentication. You might have heard of Active Directory or Google Workspace or whatever, but ultimately you have a company account and then that flows downwards into your systems like email and things of that nature. And it's a really common practice, and it's not a good practice. It's a really common bad practice for your partners to create a separate account for you. Well, you'll be just contractor one at my company. Well, now you got two identities. You got one in your company and one in their company. And guess what? When you leave one company, the other one doesn't know about it, and that user account stays there for a long time. The example I often give is Siemens. Look, a lot of my customers, they have equipment from Siemens, and they say to me, look, I got the Siemens account on my VPN. I'm like, Siemens? There's like 300,000 people work at Siemens. Did somebody get fired while we were talking for cause? Maybe. And they might have that password. Did you know about that? How often do you change it? I'm like, change it? What are you talking about? I can't change it. Siemens knows it. So you've got a really big risk there. And there's no reason, that going back to that first and second slide, I want you to say this is easy. the user was able to sign in with their Google or Microsoft with no new password and be secure. And if they leave that company, it's taken out. We don't have to fight about this. We can actually be harmonized on it together. And as a consequence, we can get rid of local accounts and make it all single sign-on and multi-factor, and convenience gets better and security gets better as opposed to getting worse. Because otherwise you end up with problems like people put TeamViewer in, and it's not a really good thing. So there's this industry standard called Zero Trust, and I say standard in a loose sense. It's more of a philosophy. And Zero Trust, there's a lot written on it, but it's actually a relatively simple concept. It's got 3 swim lanes. The first is the who swim lane, identity. Who are you? If I can identify you down to an individual person, as opposed to you work for a company or something, then I've got the first phase of Zero Trust solved. I need to be able to know who you are, you specifically. Authorization of the what problem. What are you allowed to do? Are you allowed to have read-only access to that HMI? Are you allowed to have, read a tag on a PLC? Are you allowed to write a tag on a PLC? Are you allowed to update firmware on it? Are you allowed to reboot a printer? What are you allowed to do? And on what resource? It's not just in general you can update all PLCs. It's you can update that one. And that one might have some time in it. Maybe it's a manufacturing line and they put a safety pin in a robot and you're going to do some remote updates and they don't want you updating the wrong one. Like line 2 is in production. Line 1 is down for maintenance. They don't want you updating line 2. And then the last one is how. How do I get there? How do I get to that thing? So in our system, it's a transparent tunnel. Not entirely unlike a VPN, but from your standpoint, you can have multiple of them up simultaneously, which means you can work on 2 customers at the same time, which is a big game changer, or 2 sites of the same customer at the same time without worrying about overlapping IPs. But also, you can't get to anything you're not allowed to. So it's like a tunnel to that one resource. It's kind of like having a really long finger, a really long Ethernet cable to that one resource. If you have who, what, and how solved per person, per resource, you have Zero Trust. I don't know why they called it Zero Trust, but they called it that. And you guys have a shared custody and a shared destiny. So you think about that Venn diagram on the right there, your customer might be supported by 2 different partners. And by having that authentication in theirs and yours and trust, one of them might use Microsoft, one of them might use Google, and then they control the authorization. So the customer owns the authorization. You jointly agree on authentication, and boom, everybody's happy. And now the vendor gets to do what they need to do, and the customer gets what they need done. And everybody says, this worked the way I want. The operator says, this is as secure as I need, and it's simple enough for all the vendors I have. The vendor says, yep, all my customers are the same, and therefore, and I'm proposing that you, as a integrator or iManage demographic, you can run this service on behalf of your customers. That's a lot of our partners do that, and it solves that the customer doesn't know how to do it. You take it on, you help them manage. They manage the users, but you do it for them, and it provides an additional service that you can charge an additional amount. It also lowers your cost of doing remote operations. So that's where that non-zero sum comes in. It's secure for me and simpler for all. So the end user sees a very simple sign experience, which is consistent with all their other tools like their email. One of the biggest security risks out there today is called phishing. I send you an email and I convince you to do something. Hey, you've won a free gift card, click here, or hey, I need you to change your password to DocuSign. And you're like a trusting individual, you do it. And I've convinced you to do something you shouldn't have done, and bad things happen. The best way to protect against phishing is that your sign-in experience is always the same. It's the same URL. There's a little green lock icon. It's the same HTML. It's the same, in the upper right, that's the street outside my office 125 years ago. We use Google Workspace. We're signing in with that, but you can also sign in with Azure. It makes it much simpler for all parties involved. It's more secure because the end user is now part of the security model, because they will recognize when the sign experience doesn't look the same. They don't have to remember any new passwords. You have a perfect audit trail. You know exactly who did what when. And if you're the iOperate demographic, that's key because you own the risk. So you want to understand that all the risk things have had a checkbox put in them. And as a manager, you say, I manage, all your customers are now the same, and you don't have to worry about having, look, I got 10 customers with 10 different VPNs. What I'm going to do, provide 10 different laptops to my staff? Oh no, I'll do 10 different VMs, and each VM is always signed in. This just works. You can do multi-factor even with an air gap. It's all in the browser. I know there's some tools that don't work in the browser, like Rockwell Studio. We have a way of doing a desktop integration with them. When the user launches Rockwell, when they click on the PLC, a browser will mysteriously open, they sign in, boom, the browser goes away. Now it's like they're connected to that PLC, even though they can't ping it. It's not on their local network. It means that the plant can't get bad data back to me. I can't get bad data towards the plant, and we're all happy. So why does this reduce the risk? Well, shared accounts are gone. You don't have to worry about their HR churn becoming your issue. Somebody got in a fight and yada, 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 and did something bad. It's not going to be in your vocabulary anymore. Overbroad access is also gone. I talk about blast radius. So it's not like the old model where, here's a key to the door and try not to do anything bad. You actually only have access to the thing you need in the role you need it, which means even if you make a mistake, you can't do anything wrong. We often talk a lot about cybersecurity as if we're protecting against the smartest state actors in the world. I draw a graph with two lines on it. One is motivation of attacker and one is skill set of attacker. And they're in the upper right, high skill, high motivation. In the lower left is the industrial accident. I walked in there with a USB key that I got from somewhere and I plugged it in. I walked in there and I tripped over a power cord. They're kind of the same impact, right? I didn't really have any skill set or any motivation, but bad things happened. Security prevents that too. So you want to think about that area. You got an audit trail for everything. Think about how much better you'd feel. Something bad happened. Now I know who did what, when, and how far it went. It's much better than, I don't know. You can enforce multi-factor. Nobody loves multi-factor. Let's be clear on the subject. But if you can make it just work, so it's biometric and you kind of blink at your phone or press your thumb on it and it works, you kind of, well, it's not a big deal. I just have to touch my phone a couple more times a day. I already touch it 10,000 times an hour. What's two more? Removing the VPN. I am not here to say the VPN has no place in the world. I'm saying the VPN has no place in this world. You think about the Colonial Pipeline hack a couple of years ago. An oil pipeline that goes between New Jersey and Houston, covering something like 2/3 of the United States population, and there's a bunch of people connected to it for various good reasons, or third-party vendors, that is. And one of them has a VPN there, and something bad happens in their system, and because the VPN is layer 3 connected, and it gets all the way through, and pipeline goes. Wars have started over that. I mean, to be honest, that's a big deal. And all it was the weakest link. The VPN makes the weakest link be everywhere. So one person did one bad thing on one PC on one insignificant network, and because it's all interconnected, the butterfly flapped its wings and yada, yada, yada. I've talked a lot about zero trust here, and it made it seem like it's very, very complicated. This is very simple. We install a small piece of software on something on site. That something could be anything. Industrial PC, Raspberry Pi, Linux, Windows, a bunch of routers, Cisco IOX devices, doesn't matter. It makes an outbound connection to our cloud, and everything else is done through a web interface, and you just go click, click, user add. You can be done in the entire time it's taken me to do this webinar. You could have had the first site lit up and live. That's our typical model. And people think about a Gantt chart with a project manager and months and months and months. No, it's right away. It works on any site. It doesn't matter if they have Starlink or cellular with an inbound NAT and you can't get back to it. It just works. And the unified authentication, there's no real configuration there. You saw what I did. I just typed in their email address, and then I was able to authenticate them against G Suite and against Microsoft Entra, and it just worked. And that precise authorization, you can spend as much time or as little on this as you want. You can just say, look, VNC is all the same, or you can say I have a viewer-only role and a read-write role on VNC. Those Rockwell panel view things, some people, I want them to be able to see it. I don't want them clicking on it. So there you go. And now you feel a lot more confident, hey, anybody can read it, but nobody can touch it. That's probably okay with me. So that's super simple who, what, how, authentication, authorization, access becomes your implementation. So from an operator standpoint, their challenge is, I own the risk, security is important. My staff also need remote access. And this is where my pitch is to you, the partner that we would partner with. I think there's a new opportunity for you to add more to your line card, your rate card to your customer, and say, look, I'm managing this on a 24/7 for your team, but also some of your team periodically need it. Let me just run that for you as a service. I'll just add it into my invoice. And the operator would be like, great, as long as it's secure enough. Okay, my IT team signed off on security because zero trust, we're good to go. Some people have rules, internal industry rules about who can do what. Sometimes it's just choices they've made, but you've got the ability to demonstrate you're meeting all those from compliance because you have the audit trail. The operator's challenge, they often have a little control. They don't like the idea of the the E1 that put a cellular modem inside a cabinet. Nobody knows what it is. They want to be able to have that trust plus verify. So it's their Entra system, their users, their audit trail. And their problem really is the complexity of the systems has crossed their ability to fully understand it, which puts them in the uncomfortable situation of having to trust their supplier. And although the supplier may be inherently trustworthy, mistakes happen and then acrimonious arguments there. But the flip side is remote support is less expensive. It's expensive hourly. On-site support is more expensive hourly. The manager's challenge. I manage stuff on behalf of my customer. I do not want to hear every customer has their own snowflake way of a different VPN or system. I can't install them all on my laptop. I don't have the license. This is their software, not mine. I can't share them with my team. This restricts my ability to be efficient. I got a team of 20. If only one of them can support one customer, it's too hard for me. Somebody goes on vacation, I can't support them. They use multi-factor, but it's not the same as mine. I don't want to have a keychain full of YubiKeys on my or RSA fobs. It's just no fun. I just want convenience and cost, and driving is an inefficient use of my time. I would prefer to support you remotely. So here's my proposal. And I was going to have this as a video, but then I realized that everybody I present to is younger than me. But when I was a kid, there was this great, you got chocolate, my peanut butter, you got peanut butter, my chocolate commercial. And it was all about people running each other in the hall. One was eating a chocolate bar, one was eating a jar of peanut butter for some reason. It's sort of a metaphor for the two together. You know how to manage your customers. I know how to build great software to do it. Together, there's an opportunity for us to create a prepackaged service. You run the remote operations. You use our software as part of it. Partner with us. We solve all the identity, access, security, and it's non-zero sum. Your customer wins because they have better remote operations that is more secure, that is more economical. You win because you have a more efficient team, getting more customers done per hour with making a higher profit, and you have more things to sell. And I win because I'm selling my software. So that's the proposal, is all three of us win. And that's the value created for our joint customers, that enhanced security, increased operational efficiency, and that seamless end user experience, so they can use their tablet or their phone from their truck rather than having to come back to an office and open a laptop. With that, my pitch, I will take any questions that pop up. And I will say there's not usually a lot of questions, so seeing no questions, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate it. My team will reach back to you later with a copy of the recording as it was, and an introduction to see if we can continue the conversation. Thank you very much, and everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.